Hi, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get things started this morning. Thanks so much to everyone on the line for spending some of your morning with us or evening, wherever you may be in the world today. We're really excited about this webinar, and we have a lot to share with you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm Katie, the marketing manager here at Auritas, and I'll be your host for today. I've been in the tech world for about 5 years now, and I'm joined by two other great speakers, and I'll just briefly introduce them to you guys as well. On the far left of your screen, you'll see Auritas CTO Deepak Sood. Deepak has been a data archiving expert for almost 20 years now. He's presented on numerous topics at various SAP events and regularly contributes his expertise to enterprise business leaders. Next to him, you'll see Big ID co-founder and CPO Nimrod Vax. Nimrod has over 15 years in enterprise security software and identity management, servicing in various capacities, ranging from engineering and product and business management. Now that you guys have gotten a brief introduction of the speakers, we'll go on to the next slide here, and I will go ahead and hand things over to Deepak and Nimrod to go over today's agenda. Deepak?
Thank you, Katie. Hello, everyone. These are the different areas that we're going to be covering today, including the fact that, what are the common challenges we face in the data today? The way we have structured this webinar today is we want to give you a quick insight about the different challenges you're going to face, the solutions that you can get out of this piece, out of the combination of SAP and Big ID all put together, the returns that you're going to get, meaning the net result and the outcome, how does it all come together? And once you feel like, okay, well, this is the framework based on which this whole process can come together, we're going to also provide you some questions, some insights, some areas where you can look into and see how, in different areas, the solutions around data discovery and finding the information is going to be a great fit for your organization. Last but not the least, we're going to go into some use cases, some success stories, and also a demo. So a pretty full agenda on our side to cover, both from Nimrod and I, from our side. Hope you're all safe and, able to, see this presentation clearly. And if at all there are any issues, any questions, please type it in the chat box and we'll try to answer your questions accordingly. And also, if you have any questions around the slides, everybody's on mute. We'll be happy to address your questions at the end of this webinar. So these are some common challenges that you will find with data. So I started this conversation more with just like, what is data and what are the different challenges your organization face. You will notice that I'm not talking application. I'm not talking about the fact that how that applications are intertwined and linked together. We are more addressing the fact that data and the core for information, whether it is structured or unstructured. The larger the volume we have, granted we have abilities to handle huge volumes, it creates its own challenges, whether it is from creation or from management. More management these days than anything else. How does it all come together? You have disparate systems. You have multiple environments where you are keeping information in different ways. One could be transactional, another one could be analytical, another one could be merging the two information and getting some insights. But not only that, you will find that you might be creating silos to get your information quicker and faster. So you are creating a subset of your data and keeping it at different locations. Data is still not having an ability to have a holistic view. In other terms, you have your segregation of duties, you have your security rights and all, but many times the way you want to see an information, the way you want to look at it, it's not accessible all the time. Your data definitions, or even more importantly, the data quality is debatable many times. Consider the fact that you could have a master data record and you could have a material or a customer or a vendor, and you say that my vendor has got 100 attributes linked with it. Well, as you are looking at that vendor for your organization, and typically you will have more attributes linked with it. But let's say that you have 100 attributes. Are all those attributes, number one, filled, completed for you, from across different platforms. Another example could be also, are there duplicates? Are the different applications having a holistic way of accessing all that information, including the data and transforming all of those information and putting the governance together? You will find these are all challenges day in and day out that your organization fails. Data could be conflicting, and that's why the duplicates comes, or many times also the data is being overwritten, and the lineage of this information not defined, and also the lack of reference data. So how does this whole process come together with Big ID in SAP? I'm just presenting this solution, and we will provide you with the background of what Big ID solution is. But you will find this solution is able to provide you a quite granular insight into the solution. How does it do that? I'm going to again show it to you, and Nimrod is going to show it to you with the demo. You are able to address different regulations, whether it is regulations linked with privacy, whether it is regulations linked with any kind of audit compliance, any kind of legal disputes. Discovering the data becomes a primordial issue, and knowing where this information is. And then after that, managing and addressing that piece comes right after that part. And you will find that all of those things are being addressed using the Big ID solutions. You are able to reduce the silos. Also, you are able to address the areas around deduplications. You are able to search both structured and unstructured data, and net, you are able to reduce your overall cost. Organizations who have implemented the solutions, these are some of the things that they are saying that they have found so much value into this exercise. For instance, your data that has an exposure, to what level you want that information to be available, whether it is a qualified information, or whether it is something that is vulnerable. Are there any policy violations and all? With the Big ID solutions, they are finding this information instantly. Issue, or I can give you some examples, and we did it in our prior webinar. We had organizations who will say that, it used to take us days, and some organizations spend millions and millions of dollars doing e-discovery or data discovery in their environment. With this solution, you are able to search not only this information in the SAP system, but across your enterprise for all the different platforms, and identify vulnerable records. If there are any risks coming, any policy violations coming, you are able to have a comprehensive view of all that information aggregated together on a single screen. And that's a really important attribute. I didn't even want to put any sub-bullets around it, because this by itself speaks volume about this product. And last but not the least, you are able to see both structured and unstructured information all in one piece. And I'm going to share all of that detail. I'm building this content, presenting this content to you so that, you can see how this whole solution of linking SAP and Big ID together creates a strong value proposition for different customers. Nimrod, you wanted to add something to it?
I think what's also unique is that the ability also to map to data that is stored in business applications, and not only in the form of structured or unstructured, and also data in motion, data captured through data transfer in Kafka streams or in Kinesis streams. It's also the ability to kind of interact with the applications and get visibility into applications as they use the data. So the notion of data discovery is really extended beyond just the traditional structured and unstructured use cases.
Great, thank you. So considering we deal with enterprise data all the time, and I just addressed one attribute of it, where we can say that management of that data and the complexity around it can be identified, can be addressed seamlessly using the solution. But you will find that there are some other things in a life cycle management of the data that are becoming more and more critical. And we'll give you some examples on that part also. Lifecycle now states you create information, you manage information, but then you also have to purge or dispose the information. it is not necessary that you have to hold on to that data, hold on to, to that data for an extended period of time. Lifecycle talks about efficiently capturing only what you need, what is information valuable to your business, but then also getting rid of it. So how does it all come together? Also, as you are doing this part, you want to manage that information effectively. For those of you, who might not have seen, there is a change that has come through in the privacy requirements for the California Data Protection Act, and now it is called the CPRA. And there are some more details that have been added to it, and we'll be happy to cover those parts also out there. But more importantly, as you are putting these processes, can we automate those processes for you? This is again something so valuable that the solution can offer for you. Now, if we go further into that area, I would say that now that we have covered and shown you the value proposition, I would say, this is more of a questionnaire we have created where we can say about the what if scenarios, where you will find that big ID solution can be a really value add for you, starting with, even in the space of analytics, who is being included in your analytics? Do you have a contractual rights or individual consent to use their data and their solution? A quick analytics information out there, yes and no would be helpful, but then if I have that information, how exactly am I managing it? Or if I'm out of compliance, what should I be doing with it? These are all the things that Big ID can solve for you. And I'm not going to go from all these questions individually, but as you can see out there, there are a lot of value adds in analytics, in data science, customer 360, even in product development. But compliance, overall ROI, and efficiency is a strong value add that this solution provides for you. And as you can see that this all results in a strong control on your overall infrastructure. You are able to mitigate all your risk around non-compliance, data breach, and even the cyber attacks that might be, your organization might be getting exposed to, because you can find out where the vulnerabilities are. So the way we look at it, that if you are building a big overall approach towards managing your data, you're looking at areas around governance, areas around privacy, areas around compliance. And these are all the things that you want to be looking into, from understanding your requirements, understanding the upstream and the downstream data, understanding how this data could have certain level of risk associated with it, and how do you minimize that part. And that comes from the ownership of the data, ability who can manage, reconcile, and all that information. And last but not the least, how are you able to have a consolidated view of all that information together? Let's take another piece around the data piece, and then we can start going granular into the product itself. I want to quickly touch the fact that data has got different elements linked with it. It has volume, and volume will be tiering your data. These days, as you know, with the cloud platform coming, with the database abilities expanding so much, and also the ability of having a Hadoop or a Kubernetes environment or different data lakes, you can store humongous amount of data. But you will also recognize the fact that you want to tier that data. There is some data you access frequently. You want to keep it in a very responsive platform. There is some historical data that you might not access that frequently. You want to keep it on and not so responsive and a cheaper storage. And that process is called the tiering of data. That's all part and parcel of the data volume management. We touch data quality from master data as well as transactional data side. To keep the data quality in check and up to date, that goes into the governance piece. That could be master data governance or transactional data governance. And not only that, it already links to compliance, privacy, and also the unstructured data. That could be your documents, that could be your streams of XML feeds, that could be your video feeds and all. You will find all of those things now connect together, and they connect together in accessing quantified information. But data discovery requirements, for finding that information, has all these parameters that are linked with it, whether it is compliance, whether it is e-discovery, risk management, and all. And Big ID is able to do or address all of those things. So I'm going to pass the microphone over to Nimrod, and he's going to give his view of how Big ID addresses all of those requirements. Nimrod?
Thank you, Deepak. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining the presentation. I think one of the things that you see that is almost, I would say, paralyzing sometimes as it relates to broad scale analytics and use of the data are the regulations that restrict us. And one of the most, or some of the most restricting ones are the privacy regulations. We know that these regulations are not going away. There are global trend around privacy regulations that came after the GDPR. So globally, over 60 countries have already put in place GDPR-like regulations, whether it's GPD in Brazil, whether it's the privacy rules even in Britain and in China, and Japan has adequacy, and now with GDPR, and will be putting out privacy regulations in a similar way. And also within the US, post CCPA, we see CIPRA, which Deepak mentioned. In California, it's the next wave. It's the more refined, more GDPR-like regulation that is coming up, but also over 20 states are already having legislation, privacy and data breach regulations that are being done. And the concerns, if we ask our customers what are they concerned about, surprisingly, it's not so much about the penalties, which could be significant and are increasing, but it's not really about the penalties. It's more about the reputational risk of being labeled as violating those privacy policies, and in general, being non-compliant or dismissive of privacy could be very badly perceived by your customers. And so we're seeing all the big brands taking a lot of interest in tools that help them automate and maintain and control privacy. And that's what we've seen also. So looking at what Big ID is, essentially, 4 years ago, we've identified that trend, and we've started really from the privacy space, but since then we've long gone beyond just privacy. But what we've identified 4 years ago is that those regulations are restricting the use of data and putting organizations in a situation where they either have to deal with those regulations in a manual way, which just does not scale, because the tools that were available at the time, and still to the broader extent, are not providing the support they need in order to be able to address those needs. And so those are requirements, whether it's the right to be forgotten or breach response investigation. Those requirements really require them a couple of things. First of all, the definition of what is personal has changed. So there's a much broader set of definition of what data they need to find and classify. It's not only those 40 or 50 different PII, that records or personally identifiable information like social security number, credit card number, phone number. It's really anything associated with an individual or a household. That's the definition of CCPA, for example. So you need to find anything associated or correlated to an individual, and that is considered personal. So that requires much more insight about the data. It requires to know that correlation of the data to an individual. It requires you to be able to also connect to more types of data, because the scope is global. And so what we've built essentially is a data discovery platform that help organization reach to all of their data, all the types of data, structured, unstructured, big data, NoSQL, cloud storage, on-premise, business applications, data warehouses, data pipelines, mainframes, a very broad set of connectors. We have over 100 of those, and provide really deep insight. We call that discovery in depth, which is the foundation. First and foremost, cataloging all the data, just knowing what data you have. The tools before that were very transactional. They only looked at data in motion, or they looked at data with violations. They didn't really create an inventory of all the data. So cataloging, classifying what type of data it is, performing analysis of the data to find duplicate and similar information across your data sets, and also correlating it back to an entity, to a user, or to a product. And that gave the foundation to then also address a lot of the privacy use cases, and we address that through privacy applications, whether it's the data subject access request application, whether it's a record of processing activity application, whether it's all kinds of other types of consent and consent governance that are required for privacy. Data protection applications that help you better protect the data because you can't protect what you don't know. So applications for access governance to know where you have open access, or application for risk assessment, or an application for remediation. Those are very data protection centric and are relevant to the CISO. And obviously data perspective applications that help you get more value out of the data, which help you streamline AI and analytics by allowing you to find the right data, to find data at high quality, to understand lineage, to applications that help you perform data stewardship and so forth. So that's kind of the high level of Big ID. The core, or the first thing Big ID does, is create that catalog, a unified inventory of all the data, recording all the metadata about the data elements, both the technical metadata, what is the name of the file, what is the type of the data, what is the name of the column, where is the public, private keys, etc. The operational metadata, who owns the data, who has access to the data, etc. And also the business metadata. What is the data being used for? What type of data it is? What is the purpose of processing? What is the categorization of the data? All of that is consolidated into a single repository, a catalog that you can label and tag and search, and then build on top of integrations and enrichments. Also capturing data in motion. And this is particularly interesting and relevant for data pipelines and analytics, because in most cases, those analytics pipelines start with data that gets streamed into a data warehouse using Kafka or Kinesis or other streaming technologies. It then goes into a data warehouse that needs to be scanned, and then analytics are done on top of that data warehouse. And being able to capture the data as it flows into the data warehouse is very important, because it allows you to avoid having to scan huge amounts of data in a data warehouse, or petabytes of data. It allows you to scan just the data flowing in, getting quick visibility into the type of data that is flowing into the data warehouse, in order to help you govern and search and find that data, to know where it fell inside the data warehouse, and then being able to apply controls and get visibility, to catalog all that information in the catalog, so you know what type of data you have. This is done in a way that does not impact performance, implicitly in the background. Once you have that catalog with all the information, both from scanning, data at rest, and data in motion, and data in use, you want to be able to enrich and synchronize the metadata with other tools. You want to import business glossaries from a data catalog, or a data stewardship, or a data glossary, right? You want to then map those terms to the physical terms, or the physical metadata that you find, so you know where those terms, those business terms, where do they exist, where are they found? And then you want to populate that back and enrich other tools, whether it's your MDM tool, or whether it's your other data catalogs that you use in your environment, because there are a lot of them. You want to be able to enrich them and make them more, make them stronger. Make
right.
them more.
And Nimrod, on that piece, I think we're going to show them in the demo of how we can consolidate information across different platforms and merge the information, so that there is a cohesive view of looking at information, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, once you have that information and you've exchanged metadata, both populating it in third-party tools, but also enriching and synchronizing our own metadata catalog with information that come from the business, like the purpose of processing and how the data is being used. Now you could have a more privacy-centric view of the data, because of the correlation capability that Big ID has, it's able to know more about the data elements that it found. It doesn't only say what type of data it is, it also knows whose data it is. So you can slice and dice that data based on the residency. We'll talk a little bit about that, but those of you who follow the news recently, so Privacy Shield was basically canceled or canceled by the EU. They don't no longer accept it or regard it as a mechanism for data sharing between Europe and the US. This is called the Schrems II ruling. What that means is that organizations now need to rely on corporate binding rules and clauses that that regulate data flowing and data protection within the organization, and need a better way of monitoring and internally to understand what data that they store is subject to GDPR. In other words, where do they store data of European residents, and how do they make sure that this information is properly governed and controlled and not shared with other third parties? And that needs to be possible, or is possible, only using this type of technology that allows you to know what type of whose data it is that you're storing. Helps you validate and monitor those binding corporate rules, and allow you to kind of control data residency. The other thing that's enabled by having that view of the data is applying policies and controlling the data and protecting it. So one of the things that Big ID can help you with, apart from giving you visibility to where sensitive information resides, it also can give you information about when those environments or those data sets are not properly protected, where there is, for example, open access. A data set that's that has sensitive information is available to everyone in the organization without any restriction, or in the cloud when it's exposed to the public, right? And so Big ID can give you an alert on that so that you can better protect that information. So
thank you, Nimrod. So I'll give one example around here, and Nimrod, I'm gonna ask you for some more customers, of how they have consumed this data and how they have utilized. This is a schematic that I really like, and it's a very simple view, but it creates a really strong message of how we can start with these three parameters that you're looking at. Gordon Stewart is a person. For we might have a customer number for him, maybe not. It's not a requirement, and we have an email address. Now, here comes a requirement where we want to address the requirements around data discovery. It could be a requirement around privacy. It could be a requirement around an audit or a legal dispute. Now, how do we address this part? So first, we start with the fact that, if there is a requirement coming in, if somebody has logged that information or somebody has not captured that information, what do we have on the areas around unstructured arenas? We might have the feeds coming for Gordon Stewart on Facebook, Twitter feeds, or any of the Google Ads programs coming. There could be some other unstructured information also coming along with that. We are able to quickly collect all of that information and itemize what is it that we are looking at from the driver we have. Could it be privacy? Could it be a legal dispute or anything on that part? This is information that Big ID is able to provide instantly to you. Now, this is the basic information about how the user clicked, where they came, how they attended, the different sessions, webinars, any video feed. But then let's say that this particular user became a customer of ours. Gordon Stewart purchased something, and we might be using a CRM platform. In this case, it might not be an SAP platform, but we identified that we had certain kind of leads and opportunities created out of it. We ended up making transactions around it, and we have a payment or a credit card number captured around it. The moment we captured that information, again, we have certain kind of PII information and all. Big ID will be able to automatically itemize that detail for you also in a single screen. Here comes the next piece. We shipped that information. we send that information over to the customer. We got their details on that. And in some cases, we might also have secured their consent for utilizing their details or connecting with them or sending them more product details and all, and keeping them alert on a regular basis. Again, we have all of those details on really diverse platforms that we captured for Gordon Stewart. Imagine if you did not had a centralized tool, how long would it take you to capture that detail? Your scenarios could be even more diverse, a lot more complex than what you're looking at. But this is an insight that you get that, hey, we started with this 3 parameters, maybe 2, who knows? But imagine the amount of information we have for that particular customer, and then how quickly we are able to quantify and qualify that information. What is the information we should be holding? What, if at all we have to sequester any kind of information, we have to encrypt any kind of information, or even if you have to purge any kind of information, now we can do it pretty quickly on that. And how do we do that? This is something, again, that it's a huge value add. As Nimrod has mentioned, BigID provides you with over now, Nimrod, correct me if I'm wrong, now it's over 150 connectors that you have for different applications. I'm assuming that,
over 100 integrations and open architecture that allows you to build your custom applications and integrations as well.
Great. And then we have our ability to even enrich that detail further by whether it is using the tools around ETL process, and we talked about also data quality and governance around it. Not only that, once you have your consolidated information available to you, now you can export or transform that data and take it to an analytics platform and really use it to your benefit. A solution like Data Warehouse Cloud from SAP, a cloud-based solutions for doing advanced analytics, can really benefit from a solution starting from accessing all the diverse platform, processing it and connecting it together, and then doing some advanced analytics on that further. Nimrod, you wanted to add something to it?
It kind of shows especially in the context of an analytics platform, that where you have the data sources that you want to scan or to leverage for analytics. BigID scans them and discovers the meaningful information that you need, just like Deepak described. As the data is being migrated or transformed and loaded into the analytics tool, BigID can enrich the catalog of the both the data analytics and the data preparation tool to inform it and add information about or metadata pertaining to the data elements that are being transferred, so that the people that are building the ETLs or building the transformations can have more insight about the data. And then that allows the BigID to basically enable that analytics in a controlled and compliant way, so that the data is not misused, that you don't inadvertently export or transfer data you're not supposed to transfer based on the regulations. So it helps you regulate and control that. These are some customer stories that we've had that kind of show how the product was as being used. One of the I could jumped a little bit, but we talked about data transfer controls and preventing migration and violation of the data sovereignty. Those are rules that are enforced by countries that restrict data of their citizens from leaving their territory. This is true for GDPR. It's true for many countries in the EU, like Switzerland. It's true for data in China. And so you want to know more about the data that you're storing, whose data it is. Are these residents of those countries that have those regulations, so that you know what data sources and what data elements are in scope? Because data migrates across the board. You may be collecting it in one system, it reaches the data warehouse, it reaches reports, it reaches all kinds of other environments, and you want to be able to control that. Another use case is just building that inventory. seamlessly across all the data sources and data types and mapping it into a single pane of glass. And up until now, organizations had multiple silos of data. They had data managed and protected by the security team with security tools. They had data in data warehouse was protected or governed by data analytics tools and with different tools that knew what type of data was there. And so there, very rarely do we see organizations that have a mature inventory of all the data, especially where personal information exists for regulatory purposes. And that and our tool is able to provide that type of visibility. Cloud migration is a very common use case where organizations are adopting and migrating applications into the cloud. As they're migrating those applications, they want to make sure that the data those applications store is compliant with their requirements. They also want to find duplicate data as they're doing that so that they can reduce the cost and risk associated with the data when it's stored in the cloud. And so that requires, that is a very common use case that we're seeing. Consent. Tools like SAP CDC and other tools collect consent from consumers. But those consent records are stored somewhere and then never followed up on. And what if someone wants to be deleted or someone wants to know what data you store about them? And you find out, how do you make sure that you actually have permission to collect that information before you share the report with that person? So that is an important next step. Once you collect the consent, you want to also govern that you're not violating those consent, that consent that you receive from your customers. In order to do that, you need to know for each data element that you find, not only that it's sensitive or personal information, but also who it belongs to, so that you can validate that that person provided consent. If they haven't provided consent, you could either delete that data or get consent from that person. We talked about finding duplicate and similar data in the context of cloud migration. It's also very common in the context of security because you want to reduce risk, and duplicate data introduces risk with no value, and also finding similar data helps you with information classification, information sensitivity classification of the data at scale. So if you find a cluster of similar data, you could easily label it and then apply policies based on that. So it helps you with
I just said very good. I mean, this is a very, an important area in that, duplicity that we can address using this tool.
Yep.
So, Nimrod, how exactly we do a quick demo for our audience out here to show the capability? I'm going to make you a quick presenter, so that we can share the capabilities of this tool. Do you mind doing that?
Absolutely. Let me know that you can see my screen.
Yes. Yep.
All right. This is the dashboard of Big ID. You can see that it kind of gives you a visibility of the data, how many records and data sources are being scanned, calculating a risk of that data over time. Also pointing out how many unique entities overall do I have in that environment. And then allowing you to deploy policies and discover violations of those policies. If you don't want to have data of European residents out of Europe, you could trigger a policy around that, and that policy can be detected. So these are kind of examples of CCPA related policies, information of European residents found outside Europe. These are use cases that you can then easily investigate in the inventory and search, find all the data of Europe, of French residents outside of that is found outside of France or Germany. And Big ID can find the residency where residency data of German residents in this case is found outside of Germany. So those are all the blue dots are all the data sources that contain German resident data that are found outside of Germany. And then it also gives you the list of those entities so that you could, if there's an issue, you could reach out, you can export that list. So for example, if you have a breach in one of those data sources, let's say one of those data sources, for instance, this directory was triggered, exposed, and you want to find all the German residents that were on that data source so that you can notify the German DPO, you could do that. So this is more of a privacy-centric use case. I know it's not necessarily the primary use case for most of the data people here on the call, but just worth mentioning because of the Schrems 2 ruling that came out last week, which is very significant. It requires you to be able to have those type of controls in place. But the core really, if we look at the capabilities, is the ability to catalog all of the information. And you can see that Big ID catalogs everything, not only where you what contains personal information, but all the data elements, right, that were found. And within them, you could look at the data in motion that is collected from a Kafka queue. What type of attributes were discovered there? What is the category of that information? What is the purpose of processing of that information? But also unstructured data. For example, showing you the file name, all of the operational metadata around it. What type of information was found in it? The business metadata, right? Emails and country or full names. What is it? It's a legal document, an RFI document. So there's a categorization of the data. You see what the purpose of processing is, like I mentioned. And also finds duplicate information in this case. I could further refine it and see where there is duplicate data, so that I only see files that contain duplicate data. I find all the duplicate files. I can even run a policy and then export that information. But this is not only for files; it's also for structured data. You can see how a database would look like, and how we also collect the technical metadata. Where are the primary keys, the data types, even column profiling that give you the average length, the number of null values, the number of distinct values, minimum, maximum, average, standard deviation, a lot of information you need in order to determine the quality of the data. Again, very important as you bring that information, you want to enrich the ETL tool or the data migration and the data preparation tools, as well as the analytics tools with that information, so that your analysts choose the right data sets when they want to perform analytics. There's the ability to also perform cluster analysis to find similar files, and you can see here that the location or the size of the circle here represents the amount of files in that cluster of similar files. And then you could apply a tag like a sensitivity level to that cluster. You see it has common keywords, it has common attributes or classifications, and then you can apply that security label to it, so that the right security policy is being enforced on it. Deepak gave the example of how we find inferred information, right, across the board. So the correlation is what we use. So Big ID, you can point Big ID to a high quality source of truth information. That could be an MDM system. It could be your CRM system and the list of customers. It could be an HR system like SAP with the list of employees. And Big ID would use that list as a learning set to learn how this information looks like in your environment, and then go out and search for that information across all the different data sources. So in this case, we have user identifiers, which could be different types, GUIDs or user IDs. And then Big ID would find them across all of the different data sources. And it would find information, it would also find connected information that is associated with it. So if you look at this example here, you see that Big ID found in all of those different tables, right, the user IDs. Here it's called the user ID. In this table here, it's called a patient identifier, but it's the same exact values. And so we know that those two columns are basically categorized as user identifiers. That is the friendly name. This is the business glossary term. that defines those physical terms, the user ID and the patient identifier. That's how Big ID maps from the logical to the physical. But it also can traverse tables and find, based on highly identifiable attributes, additional connected tables. In this case, the transaction number here is a GUID that we find in another table, which here it's called trans number. Not exactly the same column name, but still has the same GUIDs. So we know that these tables are connected. And so all the information collected here is also associated with the same user ID. So it needs to be considered as personal information. It also can be extracted as a part of an analytics exercise as a connected table to the same entity, to the same identity, and so forth and so forth. We can continue and connect to another GUID or another identifier in the find connected tables. So that is the kind of the power of correlation. Big ID also introduces, yeah, go ahead, Deepak, you wanted to add something?
No, it's okay. Continue, Nimrod, and then I'll add afterwards, please.
Sure. So this is kind of the core platform, the discovery platform, on top of which you can run applications. And Big ID comes with native applications like our data privacy applications for subject access requests, for consent governance, for business flows, the data protection applications for risk configuration, for access intelligence, and finding open access that I think we showed as well. Breach investigation, if you had a breach, we could find data associated with it and tell you whose data was impacted and which data source looks the most like the information that was built and kind of extracted. And what's more important is that you can build your own applications. And that's one of the key aspects, and allows you as a customer or a partner to come in and build integrations, custom integrations into existing tools to enhance them. We built this way the integration with SAP Data Intelligence. We have integrations with other tools like ServiceNow or Jira or Active Directory, Elasticsearch for analytics. And those applications are very simple to build. We have an application framework for it. It comes with a standard template to build. Don't need a lot of expertise in terms of development expertise, and can easily be deployed. And all of those are kind of utilities that were built at very short notice by our field. And you can see that those this specifically, for example, syncs tasks with ServiceNow, or export and import data sources into ServiceNow. So that is just another example of an integration that was built in the field. Any questions?
No, I think Nimrod, this is great. And what I'll do is, in the interest of time, we are getting close to the hour. What I'll do is I will ask Katie to do our quick introduction, and then there are some questions that are being asked both via email and via our questionnaire section out here. So we'll try to address those questions quickly.
Okay.
So Katie, I am gonna bring the slides back on our quick introduction to our organizations, and if you can take over on that, that'd be great.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, Deepak and Nimrod. Really found the presentation informative, and I hope everyone else on the call did as well. As Deepak briefly mentioned before we go into our Q&A, I just briefly wanted to introduce who Auritas is. I noticed there are quite a few new people here, so welcome. So just a little bit about Auritas. We've been around for over 15 years now, and we were founded in 2003, and we're based here out of Orlando, Florida. On the next slide here, you'll see the Intelligent Enterprise slide from SAP, which I'm sure quite a few of you on the call are familiar with. You can see here that the Intelligent Enterprise features three critical components: the application layer, the analytics layer, and the data management layer. At the bottom of the screen here in the red, you'll see that Auritas fits perfectly into that data management layer. Most of our solutions leverage EIM, ILM, and ECM technologies. We're actually the only company that can handle your data quality, data volume, data privacy and compliance, data governance, and link document management needs. Typically, a lot of our customers that come to us will face challenges around reducing their database size, ensuring compliance, trusting the quality of their data. At Auritas, we like to say we make customers clean, lean, and compliant. We also do handle unstructured data through our partnership with OpenText. And lastly, a few of our more popular solutions are data archiving, legacy system decommissioning, SAP Data Hub, and of course, data privacy solutions. Here on the next slide, I'll give you guys a brief introduction to BigID as well. BigID redefines data privacy and protection by helping organizations know their data for privacy, protection, and perspective. BigID uses advanced machine learning and data intelligence to help enterprises better manage and protect their customer and sensitive data, meet data privacy and protection regulations, and leverage unmatched coverage for all data across all data stores. So with those introductions, we'll go into our Q&A here. Give me one moment to open the question box. It looks like the first question says, how does BigID identify purposes? Is this happening in the automation/discovery part of the platform, or is this identified by hand from the business users when setting up the classification schema? This seems like a question for Nimrod, so I'll hand it over to you, Nimrod, to answer this one.
Yeah, thanks. So the purpose of processing is introduced through a collaboration feature that BigID has that sends collaboration requests through collaboration request, sends a request to the data owner of a system when where personal information is included, and notifies that person, hey, new information was discovered on your system, please provide the purpose of processing. And that's done as a part of an ongoing maintenance of the business flows. It's a part of our application for record of processing activities. It's called the process flow application. It's one of the privacy applications that I showed when I opened the application tray on the top right of BigID.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Nimrod. It looks like the next question here says, can BigID handle both structured and unstructured data? And I'll hand that back over to Nimrod or Deepak.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, so the answer is yes. It's actually, we went through that quickly during the presentation, not only structured and unstructured data, but also business application data, data that is semi-structured in NoSQL databases like MongoDB or Cassandra, data in motion and data pipelines like Kafka and Kinesis, and also any data that you send it to a classification API that BigID exposes, that you could send a blob of data and BigID can classify it and correlate it. It's also important to note that that BigID also supports a very broad set of data types, whether it's the file types, all of the Office file types, or PDFs, or big data file types like Parquet or others, and also the interception points that I mentioned in motion or at use.
All right, perfect. It looks like we have two more questions here. The next one says, can BigID map business glossary terms to physical data elements?
Yeah, it can. So the correlation, basically what it does is it maps not only the correlation, but BigID has the concept of a business glossary. It could also import a business glossary from a data catalog tool like SAP Data Intelligence or other tools, and then match it and then use those business terms as friendly names that describe classification and correlation attributes, all kinds of findings that BigID finds. And then as it finds those types of data, it basically maps that business term. Maybe let's say the business term is a citizen ID. And wherever it finds a social security number, it would basically label that column as containing a citizen ID. And that's the way, and it doesn't matter what the name of the column is. It could be SSN or social security or whatever it is. It would, in the catalog, it would note that this is a citizen ID, and you could search for it, etc.
Right. And then it looks like the last question we have here says, does Big ID have integrations into other data governance tools?
Yes, we do. We have a very broad set of integrations to tools such as Colibra, Alation, ASG, Manta, and as I mentioned, we have the integration framework that allows you to build your custom integrations. They're very simple to build, and typically the integration we have with data governance tools is the enrichment of their catalog with the findings and the metadata, the business and operational metadata that we collect.
All right, awesome. Well, I think that wraps it up for Q&A, and I know we're right at the top of the hour. So thanks so much, Deepak and Nimrod, for presenting today, and then a big thank you to all of our attendees. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next month for our next webinar. Have a great afternoon.